Imagine regaining up to 2 hours in your workday, spending 50% less time in your email inbox, and efficiently gathering, planning, prioritizing, and accomplishing tasks, all without sacrificing your personal time. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because by taking the correct steps, you can increase efficiency by up to 300%. And today's guest is here to tell you how.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Today's guest, Leslie Shreve, founder and CEO of Productive Day, is a workload management and productivity expert who created Taskology, the science of getting things done, a comprehensive system for managing tasks, time, email, and information. Since 2003, she's helped thousands of professionals across more than 30 industries increase efficiency, reclaim 1 to 2 hours in their workday, and reduce time spent in their email inbox. Leslie's insights have been featured in Fast Company, The Huffington Post, and The Globe and Mail, and she's the author of Taskology, How to Unleash the Power of Your Most Productive Workday. Happy to have you with us. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Good. Well, let's roll up our sleeves. Pleasure to have you in. Let's dive in. I read a quote of yours where you said, being busy is not the same as being productive. I think it's a common misunderstanding, although there's the classic, it's logical, but is it instinctive? I think it's a common misunderstanding. Let's start there. Just kind of unpack that one for me.
Okay. Being busy, in both the corporate world and the entrepreneurial world, everybody's facing an overwhelming amount of things to do, email to get through, to trudge through, and information to sort through. And when your day becomes rushed and reactive, very little gets done efficiently. So by the end of the day, what people are craving, but they don't have, is that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day, that satisfaction that, oh, I set out to do this today and I got it done. Now, they do get things done. Everybody does. But was it the right thing? And did you get pulled off track? Did you get derailed? And I think that's what's most frustrating to people right now, and have been for a long time. For instance, back in 2014, 10 years ago, Deloitte identified the overwhelmed employee. We haven't shaken that one yet, and I think it will never be, because people are stressed out more and more every year. And when you're stressed out and on your way to burnout, you're not doing your best work. So busy, unfortunately, is where a lot of people feel stuck instead of accomplished and satisfied and productive.
Yeah. And I think, well said, by the way, and I think that it's like a con job. We actually believe, and if you put us on a lie detector, go, were you efficient today? Sure. I got things that I wanted to get done, maybe not the things I needed to get done, but I wasn't sitting around. I didn't play solitaire. So it was a good day, right? And
Right.
That's, I think, the lie that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, you might get the buzzer on that one.
Right. Right. All right. 2 hours a day.
Mhm.
Oof. You can save 2 hours a day. I can't tell you how many people come to me who say, I've always wanted to write a book, but I can't find the time. And I will crudely tell them, just set your clock back an hour, but we got to find it. I love that. You caught my attention with that. Share some strategies that can help us recover 2 hours a day.
Certainly. So one of the biggest misconceptions about gaining time back in the workday is that it's all about managing time itself or the calendar. That's just the start of it, really. So time blocking, time protection. Yes, we teach those things here at Productive Day, of course. But I think one of the misconceptions about that approach, because there's actually two approaches here I want to discuss. The first one is protecting time, and people say, oh, well, I know how to do time blocking. I'll block time when I need it. Well, that's kind of a problem, because what needs to happen is that you don't do it when you need it, you do it ahead of time. So one of the strategies we do here at Productive Day is I teach my clients not only why we're doing it, but how to do it, how often, how many days a week on the calendar, how many times a day, how long the block should be, and what to do when things go wrong. So it's something that actually affords them time every single day for the rest of their career ad infinitum, unless they change software systems and all of a sudden the calendar disappears. But we do it up front and ahead of time. So that's one thing. But let's go to the place where time really is hiding in your workday. Time and productivity are hiding in three processes that people don't know about. And that is task management, email management, and information management. Because when the management of these three things is not handled well, huge amounts of time and productivity are being lost. A lot of time, energy, effort are all being wasted. And as a result, progress slows down and it makes you feel like you're slogging through molasses. And it's because those processes are inefficient. And I can go deeper into each one of those and talk about it, but that's the main gist of it, is that there are processes in the workday that folks are getting stuck in, and how they're working isn't working.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Lakin's theory of time management? It was kind of, it was a book, we were all kind of at Xerox, we were all given this book in the 80s. And I actually taught a module of it in our training at Xerox. But it was, this magical, we're going to make an A, B, and C list. Keep your eyes from rolling up in your head too far now. And we're gonna get rid of the C's. We're gonna Swiss cheese the A's. In other words, I might not be able to do it completely with new pieces, and kind of reprioritize the B's. But it was sort of a one size fits all. There, poof, like a magic wand. We'll make our piles. We'll be good to go. And the time management pieces that I've seen that I really appreciate nowadays are ones that really kind of look at the individual, and almost like when you have a magazine and you take these little surveys, are you a passionate person? And you answer it, and it's like you scored a holy cow or something. But at least you're doing something that assesses you and gives you some sort of readout. It's just nice to hear that there's more to it than an A, B, and C list.
A lot more to it. Yes.
A lot for sure. It's the emails. I teased up at the front when we started. You broke it down to a few categories, but those emails, frequently I can get 100 emails in a day. And but we said that you've got some thoughts that you can knock that back in half roughly. I'm going to sheepishly give you a thought that I had with one of my clients one time about to pull that off, but it's again, you will be rolling your eyes on this one. Tell me how we can make email a little bit more efficient, because everybody struggles with that one.
We all do. And even after learning Taskology, my clients still hate email, but just because it's email and that they have to spend their time on it in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot to say about email these days. We could talk about the two camps where I leave everything in the inbox, and then there's inbox zero. So there's two sides to that. We can talk about the process itself. Like, what's the solution? How is the strategy going to work that allows a person to get through it and move on to like other things, things outside of the inbox? The first thing I'll say, though, before we dive into any of that, is that email management is really task management in disguise. It's also information management in disguise. It is really a communication tool, and it's no different than the phone. The problem is the phone, we get, 5 calls a day, maybe 10, and email, we get hundreds. So it has become a thing. So we call it email management, but we don't call it phone management. The thing is, they're the same because they're bringing us information. When we hang up that phone, we either have a task to do, or we have information to note somewhere, or something to put on the calendar, or all three. Same thing happens with email. There's information now, or there's a task or a follow-up. And so what matters the most in dealing with a tool like this, a communication tool, is what you do when you finish receiving the communication. So what I teach my clients are two very important things. And these are the two things that hold people back in managing email, or something off the phone, or from a meeting, or a hallway conversation. These are all forms of stuff that we get. The first one is, I don't know how it's useful to me. They're having trouble deciding, what's the value of it to me? What is this? Do I need it? So that decision-making is holding them up. And sometimes they just breeze by that email because they just can't wrap their brain around it. I can't think about this right now. Or the email is, really long and you can't come up for air. So knowing whether or not it's something you need is the first thing I want everyone to recognize as the first step. The second one is, well, I might have a client say, well, I totally need this, but Leslie, what do I do with it? Okay, now the second problem is, where do I put it? Now there's two places, either reference or action. So there's a lot of different reference places in the Workday. You could file something physically in a drawer. You could file something in the hard drive or in the cloud. You might have a contact that you want to put in your contact system, wherever that is. Those are all reference examples, and there's going to be many in the Workday, but there should be only one place for managing action. And in our system, it's the Taskology task list. And I can talk a lot more about that in a minute, but you really want one singular place. I call it mission control, where you literally keep everything you need to do, have to do, want to do, even dream of doing, but not all in one day. It's all in one system. So teaching people how to get those tasks and follow-ups out of email is essential, because until you get them into your mission control, there is no way you can efficiently and effectively plan, prioritize, or accomplish all of your tasks. Just trying to manage them from the source, from the inbox, from the desk, from the to-do list, etc., without missing, losing, or forgetting something.
Yeah. What concerns me sometimes, and I have a great case study, my wife, who isn't brought up very often on this podcast, but I will tell you, as you were sort of laying out the two types of systems, I'll never have more than 20 emails in my inbox. I'm that guy. Okay. I can't really ever get it quite to zero because it's a few things that are more long-term I'm working on, and I don't want to start splintering off into different files, but thousands and thousands and thousands and all sorts of files and more files and so many files. The one thing I'll tell you, this guy Lakin did in the 80s for me, I forget everything else. And as simple as it sounds, remember, we were walking around with documents at that point, but like a mantra, handle every document once. That really stuck with me. So I sort of apply it to email. So I'm not reading it and I'll get back to it. I'll get back to it. I'll get back to it. I really am methodically going through it, which some people will tell you that's why it sounds sometimes I'm a little bit short with people when I'm responding to long emails, because I can't move on until I get through your email, which has how many questions in it right now? But that's an approach. That's one I don't want you to roll your eyes on, I hope. Okay on the theory of just at least trying to handle it at once and not keep handling the same thing over and over?
Well, at Productive Day, it's not touch it once, it's make a decision when you're touching it. So because that's an old mantra, and believe me, I was in corporate for 13 years back then too. And so I had my little Franklin Covey planner. But I remember hearing that, and for the physical information, that makes some sense. But in the digital world, if you take an email, for instance, and you're right, there's that third school of thought. So not it's all in the inbox or it's empty. It's I leave the things in it that I need to do. And yes, there are a lot of people that are with you in that approach. The challenge becomes not being able to plan and prioritize. Those are two things you can't do with an email while it's still sitting in the inbox. Nothing is really effectively managed while it's still sitting there, whether for reference or for action. So when you're looking at that email, I believe that you're talking about having looked at it once and recognizing, yes, there's something here for me to do. A more efficient approach, I should say, is that when you get it onto a task list, and now you can plan what that first or next action step is going to be and target a date of action, not one that locks you in, but one that you can say, you know what, I want to look at that again on Friday or whatever. And you said long-term before, so I could go down a whole nother route.
Long-term for me is, I may have somebody that, I'm working on an article or something like that. So it's not like I can just poof and delete this.
No,
you're right. It's in play. I'm working on it. I haven't ignored it, but I'm not done with it.
Yes. And my clients have anywhere from 30 to 150 tasks on their task list, but they're not all for today or even this week or this month. So if you have a follow-up to do with someone, maybe it's following up with a sales, a contact or prospect, what have you, you can put it out in December. At least it's out of your hair. You don't have to keep staring at that email in the inbox to remind you, because those are reminders of things to do. Same with the article. If you have a next step to take, but you can't really take it until next Wednesday, Well, we get that on the task list so that you'll have it there when you need it next Wednesday. And if you want to change your mind and do it sooner or later, you can always do that. But you don't have to stare at that email anymore, and you don't have to have it in your psyche. It's not on your mind. It's off your mind and on the task list, because until all of those 20 emails with their tasks are put in the location where the rest of your tasks are, there isn't 100% clarity of what you really need to do. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to roll my eyes, but what I
You're
mean
allowed
is
to roll
that
your eyes with me.
no, but
I'm
yeah,
I'm my best audience on podcasts. I'm constantly looking for ways to
right.
to improve whatever that guest is telling me. If it's social media, I'm all ears. I hope my audience is listening, but I'm a great audience member. If it makes sense, you'll see me make changes right after this podcast. Which
Yeah,
means, by the way, normally I let you throw out your company name and we tie it in the end, but I actually want it right now. We'll go back and get it again. But I want you to tell me about how people get a hold of you, because then I'm going to ask you about this file a little bit. And I want to know if you guys do that. So how do people get a hold of you?
sure. It's productiveday.com. Very straightforward for the website. And I'm Leslie at productiveday.com.
Perfect.
LESLIE. Yeah. Very
Good.
simple.
All right. All right.
So
I gave you an extra plug, and I'll tell you why. Because I want to ask you a question that may not involve your company, but love the idea of kind of moving these things around. Is there an app? Is there a program? I mean, am I just building files now? I use a little post-it program, for instance, where I am parking things so I can see it, and it's in my face, pretty much on my screen. How about you? What do we do there?
this isn't about filing. So I'm glad you asked that question.
I'm going to use the
Taskology.
word documents, filing. You're going to have to yank all these out of me. Okay. Yeah.
Taskology is a methodology for your technology. So what it means is that Taskology is not software. This is not
Okay.
an app. As a matter of fact, this is a methodology of thinking and doing, of thinking and executing. And this is what's missing from everybody's approach to task management and their software. So when people feel stuck and they start going to look for a task management something, whether it's a program, an app, what have you, they're looking at Asana or Trello, Todoist. I mean, they might be stuck with Microsoft Outlook, but hey, Taskology was built for that. So I've been using that for 30 years now, and 20 for Taskology. It is the most powerful out there. But just like every other app out there, a lot of people don't know how to use it. They still need a method because they're getting stuck in all the bells and whistles and colors and categories and everything you can do. And when they find it and they go, wow, jackpot, I found this really cool software app for my tasks, and I'm trying to make it work for me. They end up going down a lot of rabbit holes and worrying about all the features. And, I get it, because they're feeling like, wow, if I don't use all these features, I'm not getting the value out of this app or this system, what have you. And I feel bad for everybody because it's actually way, way more complicated than it needs to be. There's only two things we need in Taskology to get things done: what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And it's the difference between task management and project management. And this is where people could just go right off the rails.
Well, you really articulated that well, because I'll give you a classic example. I am, I thought I had it all figured out when I started glomming onto OneNote. Okay. And here I've got it on my phone. I've got it on my iPad. I got it on my computer. We're all synced
Mhm,
up. How good is
mhm.
this? I got a file for blogs. I got a file for podcasts. I files for files. And that's then you know where I'm going. Fast forward months, I can't even find half the files that I'm filing into the file. Things are lost. I discover things now from there that I put in 2 years ago. I just kind of out tech myself in a sense. But
Mhm.
when you only have two or three tasks or thoughts, everything looks good, Leslie. You
I
know,
know. There
but
is
once we
such a
start
thing.
building on it, ooh,
Mhm. Yeah, there is such a thing as over organizing, especially in the email inbox and email system. And I see a ton of my clients do that. There are two schools on that. Either they have no folders at all, or they have a gazillion. And
yeah,
sometimes people do fall in the middle. That's true. But for the folks who have created all of those folders in email, they forget what they call things. They forget where they put it. They forget how they set it up. And sometimes they set it up because they're trying to pre-think it. And I tell people, don't ever set up a folder until you see a need for one. So don't try to figure it out. And then you end up with a bunch of empty folders. Then now you've got to slog through those to find the gold. you know?
Right.
So if filing is not the answer. There is a specific framework of how many folders are appropriate, customized for everybody, all my clients, but it's a range that is ideal for being able to not only file things away, but find them again. And it isn't in the hundreds, and definitely not. So folks who
All
are
right.
setting up any folder for every person that's ever sent them an email,
Yeah.
scale back on that.
Okay. All right. Let's just go there a little bit deeper for a second. So if I was a client of yours,
Mhm.
is it an ongoing consulting relationship? Is take me through your process of meeting a client? I know, assuming there's an assessment period, but what does it typically look like if a client reaches out to you?
What's interesting is that the assessment is super brief. I just do a beginning survey, and we've already had a 1 hour call just to talk about whether it's a right fit. Maybe it's a 30-minute, 45-minute call, right fit. And after the where do I sign, they have to fill out a extensive survey just so I know what their workday really looks like right now.
Right.
Um, I don't I don't really get into that while I'm doing the training. It's really basically for measuring where they started, and then we do a result survey on the end. Basically, what happens is that Taskology is an A to Z system. I mean, it starts in one place and ends in another and goes the same way every time. So everybody learns it the same way. And the private consulting that I do is either 12 hours or 16 hours. And it's a 4 to 8 week commitment that does the initial consulting and training, if you will. And then a lot of clients continue past that for ongoing coaching in much smaller packages of 4 or 6 hours. And many people have been with me for 5, 7, 10 years, but not because they didn't get it. It's because they want to keep it. So
Right.
the initial training, I dictate how that goes. It's weekly for 2 hour calls. Very first call is 3. And the reason for that is we're building that task list. So that day is a power day of 3 hours of building it. And what happens on that day, Rob, is that everything disappears. Like they get the real estate back on their desk because big pads, little pads, spiral pads, notepads, post-it notes, they all disappear. Planners, whiteboards, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, they all disappear. And if we didn't get it all in the first 3 hours, we're going to keep going until we do. Because until you have everything in one inventory, in one online digital central task list, you are flying blind. And that's where I feel bad for people because they are trying desperately to make smart decisions about how to spend their time, but it's hard. And it's hard because everything is everywhere,
Yeah.
right? It's all spread out. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting, and what you're describing right now is sort of an implementation plan, which I highly applaud. Which is absolutely crucial for you. Obviously, if I'm teaching people how to sell, and the workshop's over, we sure as shooting better have an implementation program. But it can fall between the wayside. Sometimes management loses, their oomph a little bit, etc. But for you, I don't understand how we could even have a relationship if there isn't some sort of implementation program, or we're basically just redefining exactly what we're trying to avoid. We're right back where we started from. The book, does the book supplement your training? How does the book fit into this?
I wrote that book back in 2016, and I really want to write another book. The book actually goes into the task time and email management. It doesn't go deep in information, and it doesn't go deep in a lot of areas because the editors were like, that'll put people to sleep. We don't want to get that far into it. That's why I have the Taskology system itself as a PDF. I mean, it's like 330 pages long. So we have the system in written format as a product. So the book kind of does I don't know if I'd say appetizer approach to all of those components of the system, but it is a fiction, and it does walk people through a lot of the main features of the system. I want to write another book, which is the why behind why you'd even want to do something like this. Why do you need this missing piece, if you will, in the workday strategy, which is a system for workload management, something that ties it all together. Because folks are really stuck having to feel like they got to go look for tips, tools, tactics, shortcuts, apps, and hacks. And they don't. What you need is a system. So
Right.
the next book I write is going to be the why behind
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
They're what we call unconsciously incompetent. Sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. We feel like
exactly.
we've got, I've got a system. When you study personalities, I'm sure you've, taken a look at Myers-Briggs or some of these, that, a lot of people, they either have no system or their system is so convoluted that it's kind of kooky. Uh, I'll tell you just real fast, author to author, how I handle it, because I've got books on my system and process too, and I didn't write them because I had nothing to do. Uh, I actually think when we work with clients, a book is a wonderful after piece to look at. In other words, sometimes it makes a lot more sense to read our books when you've actually gone through the training, because the first thing we want to do 3 days after the training is, oh, I'd love to just sort of slow down and catch that again. Well, in a sense, a lot of times that's our book. It's a little slower. We can't train you through a book, but we can support what you've learned through a book. That's the way I see sometimes books sort of supplementing. I actually encourage my clients, which always makes them surprised, but to not read the book before I come out,
That's
before we work
interesting.
together. It almost gets in the way. They think they know more than they actually do. It's and half the room won't read it. So now where are we going as trainers? So let's leave it and let's use it as our first line of defense when we follow up. And then thank goodness we've got virtual communication now. Coaching is and support has gotten so much better since we've been able to virtual. I don't think you get the mind share of an individual the way we're communicating right now, but you can do exactly what you were talking about, which is tend to the garden, through
You
this
know,
kind
that's
of thing.
interesting. Yeah, what you say is interesting because you were talking about training. And so we might be talking about two different things also, where my private clients, they actually do have me for the entire time. Like they're
Mm,
getting everything from A to Z and soup to nuts. And a lot of them don't even know there's a book.
right.
So the ones who maybe go buy the book first end up becoming clients because they say, oh, I read your book, but I need help implementing. Like I really need to make this matter to my stuff and my specifics, and let's do everything, because they want that guide, that coach. And I find that that's what people are also missing, because they might run out and get that bright, shiny object and just not know what to do with it. How do I make that matter to my stuff? Right. So
Yeah.
that it kind of happens in the reverse. But then also with training, I have a Taskology for Teams training course for my corporate clients. So let's say the CFO or the head of sales or the CEO learns Taskology and says, oh, I love it. Now I want my management team to learn it, or my sales team, whatever. Well, then they have the 90-day program for Taskology for Teams. And you're right in that when you do group coaching, it's very different than private consulting, because my private clients don't really need the book. They've got me.
Right.
But the people who go through Taskology for Teams, absolutely, they could buy the book and supplement later when the training is done. Let's go back and fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Right.
irony for you is very unique position you're in is people struggling to find the time to read the book.
Mhm.
There, to me, that's kind of an interesting
Which is why
scenario when you look
yeah,
at it, right?
which is why the C-suite leaders, they just call me and let's
Right.
go, let's do this. And we get
Yeah.
it done in 4 to 8 weeks. And the first day, Rob, is a game changer, like game changer, because everything disappears and it goes in that task list. And from that moment on, it is different and better.
Right. Well, stay
Yeah.
with the C-level leaders for a minute. How do you help them? How do you make them more efficient in terms of the way they're running their teams or working, within their
Right.
professions?
Well, it all starts with the individual, because as you know, individual performance builds company performance. So unless we start with the leader themselves, because we're not going to immediately start talking about what they're doing with their team. First, we got to fix their workday. So once we are able to have them, get up on that Taskology task list, get rid of all the stuff and the clutter, the to-do list. I work with executives who, like in construction, one guy had 8 different legal pads for the 8 different projects he was working on. All that disappears. So once we get them up on the task list that we teach, and they've got a time protection plan, and they know what to do with their information, they know what to do with their email, and they're getting back to zero a couple times a day, and they're rocking and rolling, well, then that's when they say, okay, let's talk about, how I'm delegating or how I'm managing interruptions and distractions, which by the way, can be woven all throughout this the whole time. Because especially when we finish building the task list and the next week they say, well, but now I don't have any time to work on it. And that's when we start talking about that task time connection in my system, where we better align the amount of tasks you have with the amount of time that you have free right now, or that you can protect. Because people have this big bucket of things to do and this tiny little thimble of time, and they never match up. So we fix that. So we get into the team discussion a little bit later, and that's when we might say, they might say, well, now I want you to talk with my director of X. I want you to work with him or her. Or they say, I got 6 or more people, we can do a team training. It's yeah.
Yeah. But you're actually, you're talking to a trainer, of course, on this side. you're doing a lot of things the right way because you want to watch anything fail, any cultural change. And let's get rid of the word training. We're trying to shift the culture of an individual and an organization. Call that
Behaviors.
what you will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, if it doesn't come from the top down, it's never going to happen.
Hmm.
And that means no auditing, no observing. You got to be in there rolling up your sleeves, making mistakes, getting your clothes a little dirty,
Hmm.
dusting yourself off to have credibility and even empathy to work with your team, right?
Yes. Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
And I've done that where in years ago, I might have done a team training and the leader didn't go through it. And exactly why I say now, let's not do it that way. But the difference is now, even if a leader does say, I'd like to be part of the team training and do it along with my people, but they haven't been through the private consulting first, that's okay because I still have built in to the team training program all kinds of things that help them, like a leadership guide for learning success, which is a 20-page PDF they're going to get that says, okay, this is how you tee it up. This is how we're going to roll it out. This is
Yeah.
how we're going to kick it off.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, I got two more questions for you, at least,
Hmm.
but I think two. I'm trying to watch my time management on this side. Uh, Prioritization.
Hmm.
I think that is also sort of one of the secret landmines that a lot of people fall into. One is, we'll tend to prioritize things we enjoy doing. That's the
Mm.
thing. I mean, if you don't mind me pontificating for 30 seconds, that's the thing that I learned also as I'm trying to help people on this side in my junior level of what you're doing, which is to remind them that we seem to think that procrastination has all to do with laziness, and it isn't. You're not being lazy. It's your priorities. You're doing things that you want to do, maybe that you don't need to do as much. So how do you how do you help people kind of restructure that prioritization? Because again, sometimes I think they don't know that they're doing that. They feel very productive, but they're going to look at you and go, I don't have enough time and I'm
Hmm.
very productive. I think
Hmm.
prioritization is kind of in the mix there.
It is. It is. So what happens is that when you look at someone's legal pad or their whiteboard or Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is they're using to try to keep track of things to do, it is literally a grab bag of every different kind of task animal that you can think of. So some are written down as projects, some are big ideas, some are multi-step tasks, some are small tasks, some are little jots that a week later they don't know what it means. I mean, there is like a whole mix on there. So let's say somebody fills up that legal pad with like 20 different things. They did a brain dump. Well, that's great. You got it out of your head. But the challenge now is which ones of these are achievable? So in my system, we break everything down to a teeny tiny action step, either the first action step to get something started or the next action step to keep something moving forward. There is a way for us to design the task, which I know sounds really elementary. People sitting here listening going, I know how to write down a task or I know how to type up a task. No, you don't. Because the problem is when you write it too big and you haven't boiled it down, you're looking at that legal pad or that Word document or OneNote, and you're saying you're kind of holding back from those things that are a little bit too big, or I don't know how to start that, or I don't know where to begin, or oh, I need Mary for that, she's on vacation, or whatever. And it hasn't been thought through. So what they do is they go after something small and achievable. Oh, I can do that. I can knock that out. Right. So that creates that sense of achievement that we're all looking for, that sense of I did something today. And research shows that it's in the task management, in the achievement of those small action steps that give us that steady forward movement that we crave in our workday. So prioritization is particularly difficult if you don't have a list that shows everything that's achievable. Like when you've boiled it down to a certain framework of everything is a task in our system, the way we define it, there's no way to measure it. Like, I don't know if this is going to take this amount of time or this amount of time. And so it's hard to prioritize because you're trying to juggle that thing that you're trying to do and match it up with your time. And at the same time, figure out, well, which one is value driven? Which one is my revenue generator? The big, complicated, ugly, hairy one might be the revenue generator, but you're not quite sure how to start it. So you go do something easier instead.
Right.
So that's what's causing all kinds of trouble and frustration for people these days.
Right. Right. And do
And
you
we fix it.
recommend that if we have that we actually get that prioritized and get it out visual in front of ourselves so that we, because because it's easy to hide these things.
Yeah, it's got to be in a digital list,
Yeah,
not a little tiny app on the phone. Go for something you can see on your computer and then sync it with your phone, but go for something where you can literally load it up, because you can't load up a legal pad. Paper is a
right,
tool, not a system. Your
right.
whiteboard is limited. And people might say, well, but I did digital. I got a Word document. Oh, no. You need something you can actually prioritize by
Got it.
action date. So everything in our system gets a target date of action, but you're not trapped by that. It's somewhere to start, because in our way, or in our method, you have to be able to pivot and turn on a dime, but without missing, losing, or forgetting anything. And with the list that I build for my clients, you can absolutely do that, and you can do it in a heartbeat. And it's not procrastination, it's reprioritizing, because anything can change, and
Right.
that's the biggest question I get. One of them, at least, is, well, Leslie, but my day changes. I try to do this, but then something happens. It's gonna keep happening. What I do is put you in a stronger position so that you can pivot, and there's no loss, no wasted time.
Good. Good. Because again, sometimes we forget that a process isn't a straitjacket.
It's not.
It's a guide. Well,
It
that's
is.
where processes go to die, Leslie. When we don't, I used to think I was going to put a tattoo on my arm that had a circle and a line on it that said process. It's okay.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
it's a guide, and but at the end, we're going to strategically learn how to use this guide and shape the shot in a way.
Routines will save you.
Right.
It's a
Right.
habit, it's a behavior change, it's something that you can trust, and it works the same way every time, but it is customizable to the extent that everybody's got a different job, career, or business. But what folks don't realize is that there's two parts to their workday. You bring your talent, experience, education, background to the table, right? That's your area of expertise. That
Mhm.
should be the biggest part of your workday, where all your time is spent using your expertise. It's what you do best. But people don't know there's another part to the workday that actually should be minimized, but it's not right now. And it's called workload management. And that is how you're working. And I said it before, I think, but if how you're working isn't working, it's literally stealing time from the part of your day that you want to be using on your expertise. And that's because the processes are broken or missing. Task management, email management, information management, and that's where time and productivity are hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I can't let you go without one more question because I saw this in some of your material and I really wanted to close with this. I am a person that learned, thankfully, in the nick of time about work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
It was not an instinct for me, and I felt as long as there was a rung on the ladder, you just keep climbing. I was raised by a Marine. We didn't go backwards. Um, and yet it really could have cost me my marriage. I mean, it was really difficult, but good. Everything worked out. It's
Mm-hmm.
just I watched how my instincts were off on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you talk to that a little bit about work-life balance and professionals kind of keeping an eye on that. What's your message on that?
My message is that because too many people right now are spending their evenings and weekends trying to catch up on tasks or catch up on email, they complain about that. They are missing out on that work-life balance, and they're missing out on wife or husband or kids, or hobbies, health, fitness, vacations, even sleep. you know, so the message is that when you're able to maximize your time and energy during the workday by really getting a system for workload management into your day, into your strategy, you will take care of so many things now between those work hours of 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever it is for you that you consider your workday, whether you're in an office or at home, it doesn't matter. But whatever you deem those work hours, you want to get the most out of those. It's not going to happen if you've got, an email thing for that and a task list over here, and you've got whiteboards and Excel spreadsheets and post-it notes everywhere, and you can't find your information. Like that's slowing you down. That's holding you back. So having that system in place allows you to pick up the pace, streamline your workday so that no time is wasted, no energy or effort is wasted, and you can literally go from task to task to task, because you don't waste time in that regrouping process, where you say, oh, great, I finished that. Well, now what? Well, what's next? And then you get sucked into email, and you look at your desk and scan all the stuff. You look for those to-do lists. No, all that goes away. So when you can move seamlessly throughout your workday and know exactly what to do with email, exactly what to do with information, exactly what to do with tasks, your progress is going to pick up so fast. You can accelerate your achievement and really make meaningful progress on your projects and your initiatives, the ones that matter the most to you and to the future of the company. And that's the goal. And then you can unplug at night and go, you know what? I got that done. And even if you want to do something later, or maybe there's a special project that excites you, well, great. That's the difference between I have to and I want to work nights and weekends, right? And I want people to have that choice.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think you've actually dripped in some other pieces in the conversation, just that sense of priority, et cetera. When we have to come face to face with that, remember, a lot of times it's easy to not do things as long as we mentally shove it in a corner somewhere. But
Yes.
when we've actually kind of got an agreed upon priority and we're really tasked out, I think that it doesn't slip into that. I'll get to it. Mine was, I won't be traveling much, in a few months. Coincidentally, most professional speakers are booked about 2 to 3 months in advance, but let's not go there. Point being, that's the drug. That's what my addiction was telling me. But if I had it visual, if I knew I had to look at it, in terms of well written out or created tasks, I think I would have been saved a little bit earlier. Let's put it that way.
And it makes everything achievable. Like, you're not going to hold back or hesitate or procrastinate. You're going to dive right in because you designed it that way to make it easy so that you get things done faster and easier and with a lot less stress. Yeah. It's small and achievable. Yeah.
Taskology, the science of getting things done. And you got a circle R there. Good for you. You
that is
registered that.
So is Productive Day. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a couple circle R's myself, so I know what goes into that. But good for you. You're protected. That's what we want. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, they can email me at leslie@productiveday.com, LESLIE. They can find me on LinkedIn under Leslie Shreve. They can find me on Facebook for Leslie Obrecht Shreve, which is a nice German middle name. And I'm on Instagram, not as active there, but going to pick up there a little bit. I'm not on TikTok or Twitter, so look for me on LinkedIn mainly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look forward to connecting with folks who want to, get out of the workday they've got now and redesign it and have more personal time for life.
Good. Maybe we can sell a book or two. I know you're not, you're not really pushing that book real hard, but I think it's like I said, let's look at the book as a supplement to the work that they'll be able to do with you.
It is. I actually have a new program that I'd like folks to get on our list. And really, I'd like to offer, a couple of free things that are on the website. They can either do our quiz, which is what's your number one productivity blind spot? That's on the homepage. And that's fun because it's sort of diagnostic. So at the end, you're going to be one of 4 things. You're either going to be a giver, a marker, a jumper, or a detective. So go find out which one you are. Or we have the Productive Day Smart Steps, which is a series of 52 short audios for the whole year, 1 a week, 2 to 3 minutes. And that's also available on our homepage. So, get on our list. I have a new program rolling out called Productive Day Powerhouse. And I want people to do that more than buy the book, because what they'll get in the Powerhouse is me. They need the guide.
Well, as much as I like my books, I am better than my books. So you can't beat that.
Right? They need a guide. Let me help you.
Good.
I'll show you how it's done.
I hope people will look you up. And I think I've learned a bunch of different things today. I really appreciate it. It was really great to get to know you. And I know we were just scratching the surface there. There's a lot that goes into this. But I just can't think of anybody who's really got this thing nailed completely. I just think their process behaviors, that's, when they say when you have a process, you have a way of measuring what you can do. And when you can measure it, you can fix it. So I just think it's smart to have a system in place as opposed to I'll get around to it system. Any case, Leslie, a pleasure meeting you. Thanks so much for being on the show. I'm really grateful. Thank you for having me on the show. It was great to talk with you today, Rob. Thank you. Pleasure. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.